Thank you, Amoy.
It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Oh.
Oh.
Neat.
Yay.
Yes.
Live on YouTube.
Can you give us the link?
Right. Okay.
All your pages.
Thank you. Thank you, Amoy.
It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Oh.
Oh.
Neat.
Yay.
Yes.
That's live on YouTube.
Can you give us the link?
Right. Okay.
You can, if you go on top, you can get the link.
On copy streaming link.
Let's put the link in chat so people should be able to see it and copy paste it.
So then can we share it?
Yeah, let's see if we can email the link to folks.
Well, we can, if we email the link, hold on, share.
I mean, we can post it.
The link is there. I don't know if it's live.
Let's put the link in chat so people should be able to see it and copy paste it.
Does it allow people? So then can we share it?
So I just put it in my Facebook and I don't know if it's live.
That's what I was.
No, I went to
well, we can,
YouTube directly.
If
and
we
it was
email the
live.
link, hold on, share.
Yeah, we can post
it. The link is there. I don't know if it's live.
You guys should mute the YouTube.
See it and copy paste it.
Does it allow people? So then can we share it?
So I just put it in my Facebook and I don't know if it's live.
That's what I was.
No, I went to
well, we can,
YouTube directly.
If we email the link, hold on, share.
Yeah, we can post it. The link is there. I don't know if it's live.
You guys should mute the YouTube.
See it and. So who's playing the YouTube? Let's.
There's like a 30-second delay, but I think that's fine.
So then can we share it?
So I just put it in my Facebook and I don't know if it's live.
That's what I was.
No, I went to
well, we can,
YouTube directly.
If we email the link, hold on, share.
Yeah, we can post it.
So what do we? So what?
Oh, good. I was gonna say, so anyone who has the YouTube on, you need to mute it, or yeah, we're gonna keep hearing the echo.
Mute the.
Like mute the YouTube itself.
So can we stream? So can the YouTube be on the Facebook?
I think we'll all have to stream it ourselves and post the link.
So I'm trying to post the link on my Facebook. I don't know if it shows up as the live, but it does.
It does not.
Yeah.
It shows up as a preview of all of our lovely faces.
Yeah, it's just everyone else is me playing with my hair, which is a terrible habit I have. That's what mine is on my page.
So you can post it, but it does just show up as an image, but we can say, live now, because when people actually click the link, they'll go to the YouTube and then they'll be able to see us.
So then, Kristin, can you quickly send to all those people?
An email?
Send a quick email to all those people who RSVP'd and send them the new link.
Yes.
Whose Facebook should I go on? Kristin?
Yeah, it's up on mine.
Online?
So it's now on YouTube. So I guess you would look at the YouTube page if you're trying.
Oh.
Okay. How do we feel?
I just sent an email to everyone who registered.
I'm posting on my page. We're going live on YouTube, correct?
Right.
We are live.
We are live on YouTube now, and you can put the link.
All right.
All right, we should get started. Nancy, are you there? How's everybody doing? I know we've had some technical difficulties, and I'm just so happy that we finally got it together, guys. Like, you know, it happens. Let's round it up. It was difficult, but we made it through, right?
So, hello, everybody. I'm so happy and honored to be with this group that has come together today to talk about a really, really critical issue happening here in New York City. Actually, it's happening nationally, but this group of people specifically want to talk about New York, and there's a representative from each borough who would like to share with you what this critical issue is. So I'm here, my name is Nancy, and I'm here to start it off. And I want to introduce you to each of these members. But before I do, I want to share with you what that critical issue is, and that is the census. And before you click away, before you run off, this is going to be a very, very important conversation. This is a conversation that we need to hear more of. And this group of people are in the forefront of changing the way in which people communicate with their community. And so this group of people want to run for office. They want to represent you. And before they even take office or run for office, what they're saying to you today is that they're looking out for you. They want you to know what it is that they need from you to not just represent you in the future, but what you can do as a citizen today in New York. So the census is a selfie of the entire country once every 10 years. And it is critical at this time that we all get counted. So I want to start off, because we started off so late, we had these technical difficulties. I want to really introduce to you who some of these people are. And then I want to go to a quick video that really sort of clarifies really what we're here to talk about. So are you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Are you guys with me?
Yes, we're with
Yes,
you.
ready to go.
I want to hear some energy right now.
We're ready like rock and roll, right? Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna start off with Staten Island, okay? And I'm gonna start off with Staten Island because Staten Island, so far, look, nobody gets an A. Nobody gets an A. But Staten Island right now is #1 in all of the city in getting counted. And so we should think about that later as to why maybe Staten Island might be #1 besides the hard work that Amoy is doing out there, and the work that many others are doing right now, including current electeds. Everyone's out there, but we need to do more. And these people are saying, you know what? We need to get grassroots. We need to talk to you directly. So I want to start off with Amoy Barnes. She's a candidate for the New York City Council in the 49th District in Staten Island. We then have Mr. Wilfredo. I'm going to skip Wilfredo and I'm going to go to the Bronx because they're second. So I'm going to go with Althea Stevens, candidate for the New York City Council in the 16th District, located in the Boogie Down Bronx. And I want to say hello. Please engage, guys. We can't. I don't want to just.
Hi guys, Boogie Down BX all day. You know how we do. I'm happy that we're #2, but we're coming for that #1 spot because we're out here working really hard. So you know,
perfect.
I'm competitive always.
Perfect. So I'm gonna go. Actually, I messed up a little bit. I'm sorry. Manhattan is actually at 57%. So I'm sorry. It's Staten Island and then Manhattan.
Okay, so we're actually #2.
Right.
You got more work to do, bro.
We're actually #2. Well, not that any of us should be celebrating, because
None of us are celebrating. I just don't like to be. I don't like to lose.
But so it's Staten Island at 60%. It's Manhattan at 57%. And we're talking to who's representing Manhattan is Kristin R. Jordan, candidate for the 9th District located in Harlem. So we're happy to have her. And so I'm gonna go quickly to Queens. Yep, I'm gonna go quickly to Queens. No, I'm gonna go to the Bronx and bring back Althea. Althea, you next. Then I'm gonna go to Queens. And who's with us representing Queens? But Julia Foreman from the 26th District located in Queens. She's here to represent the district and talk about the census and why it's so important. And you know,
we're not last, but we're also gunning for Staten Island, and we're gunning for that.
We need to.
The world's borough, and we need to show the country that that's the case.
Exactly. And I'm so surprised and shocked because this is the borough I live in, that Brooklyn is a dead last at 52%. And we're going to talk to you about why this is so critical. And Wilfredo Florentino is a candidate in the New York City Council 42nd District located in Brooklyn.
Nancy, un placer de estar contigo. But listen, we are not proud of being last on the list. We are coming from Staten Island. We're coming from Manhattan because obviously those numbers are unacceptable.
It's the only time people ever come for Staten Island. Only time.
Listen, we're here for it. We're here to be #1.
That's very true, though. You guys have this now.
Perfect. So I really would like us to start this video if we can. Is that possible? Is that still gonna happen? Let's do that. It's 4 minutes, guys, and it's an education. So let's get started.
The census is here, and you might think, who gives a shit? The revolution is here too. But as I learned in my last installment, the census has a lot to do with how your community is treated.
Participating in the census allows your community its fair share of over $800 billion in support for education, health, school lunches, highways. If you don't respond, your community is going to get cheated.
But something doesn't add up. If an accurate count is as important as Bob says it is, you'd think the states would want to make sure they get their count right. But half the states don't spend any money on the census. $0. That's the same amount of money I've spent on Wi-Fi since I moved next to a Starbucks. To find out why, I called someone doing census outreach in Georgia. Janine! Jose! I need your help, friend. So some states don't want to be counted accurately? Explain to me what's going on here.
So unfortunately, not all states have invested in the census. You have some states like California that have invested over $180 million, which is about $4 per person. But then on the other hand, you have the state of Texas, which is investing $0 in making sure they get a complete count.
So you're saying that there are places that are not trying to get the census right. Why?
When the census is done, those numbers are used in a process called redistricting, which is a fancy word for redrawing voting districts all the way down to the school board level. If you're able to keep a certain type of person out of the census, then you also keep them out of the redistricting process, which redraws the maps and distributes political power.
Now, when you say certain people, do you mean us?
You know who I'm talking about. Anytime a map is unfairly drawn, the only way we have to fight it is on the basis of racial gerrymandering. And if you don't count all the races, if you don't have the complete demographic picture, then we don't have anything to stand on to fight unfair maps.
A suppressed census leads to many of the problems we are seeing today, like disparities in healthcare, education, and representation. Okay. This all sounds like it makes sense, but it also sounds like a conspiracy theory for a very good movie. Am I being paranoid? I'm not being paranoid, right?
You're not being paranoid, they'll say. And we have evidence to back it up. If you remember, the Trump administration tried to add a citizenship question to the census. That's the Supreme Court shut down. They were working with the guru of gerrymandering, Thomas Hofeller. When he died, his daughter found his hard drive, and on those hard drives, there was a study out of Texas where he found that if you added a citizenship question to the census, it would benefit the Republican Party and white voters. No conspiracy, data, straight facts.
You gotta work so hard to be so shady.
There's one more thing that would—
Ma'am!
If you don't complete the census and you don't answer the door, the Census Bureau uses a process called imputation. If you are a Black woman living in a place that is majority white and you don't respond to the census, then they say, hey, this person might be a white guy.
You're telling me if I don't turn in the census paperwork and don't fill it out online and then don't answer the door when they come to my house because you know that I'm not answering the door, I could be a white man in the eyes of the U.S. government?
Could be.
The only time I want to be assumed to be white is when the cops show up.
In the same way, when we talk about voter suppression, the same thing is true for census suppression.
So wait, so I have to worry about police oppression, voter suppression, and census suppression too? There's too many actions.
That's what they want, they'll say. They want you to be overwhelmed so that you just throw your hands in the air and say, forget it. But we can't do that. We have to fight back. To fight voter suppression, we got to fight census suppression. And that's why my sister, Stacey Abrams, started 2 organizations that do just that.
So when you say sister, you mean like sister or like sister?
We got the same mom and dad.
Your sister, Stacey Abrams?
Yeah.
Oh, then you know firsthand how important it is to count people in the state of Georgia. It was shady how they did her.
They're doing all of this to discourage us, but what we have to do is show them that we see them. We see that you are leaving certain communities out and stripping away their political power, and we can't let them win.
Because they wouldn't be doing all of this stuff if it wasn't important for us to take it.
Yep.
So please, y'all, take the census just to let all those shady manipulators know we see you.
that was awesome.
All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something about that. And so I wanna just bring it to you guys. And Amoy, I'm gonna start with you. Amoy, could you tell me how the census is important in Staten Island? Why specifically are you concerned? And excuse my dog. I apologize, everyone. But Amoy,
part of the party too. Keep telling us the census is important.
The dog knows. He's like, the census is important. The census is
Maybe he'll get us some more views. Very, very cute. But Amoy, tell us, why is the census important to Staten Island? Why to your district? Why do you care?
Thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you to all the other amazing candidates who are here serving their community. The census is important to my community. I'm sure the other folks will agree, because when I think about Staten Island, I look at a borough that I always say is underestimated. And I say Staten Island is underestimated because if we were just given our fair share of the pie, who knows what we would be capable of. Staten Island is on a regular basis sort of left out of conversation and fighting for resources. And if our census numbers don't increase, we're going to be fighting for resources even more. Right now, specifically, we are at 60% for the entire borough of Staten Island, but that means 40% of funding is being left on the table. On top of that, District 49, the North Shore that I'm looking to represent, is currently at 55%, which is compared to 2010 census response rate is 10 points, it's pretty much 10 points less, because at this time of year, it was at 66%. So our census response rate numbers are down on the North Shore in the 49th district, almost 10 percentage points. That means that the communities and the neighborhoods and the people that I'm looking to serve are going to be, at this point, 45% short in terms of funding for schools, hospitals, housing, parks, all these different amazing resources and facilities that we want to be able to bring to our communities, we're going to be short on. And that's across across the city. So that's why it's important to Staten Island and to my community.
Great, thank you, Amoy. So I'm gonna take that same question and I'm gonna bring it on over to Manhattan. And I'm gonna bring it to Harlem and say, why do you care? Why specifically Harlem? Why your demographics? Is the census important?
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I definitely think the census is important to Harlem. Harlem is the birthplace of Black America, and I myself am a Black Lives Matter activist. And one of the things we have to realize when we talk about Black Lives Matter is that it's not just about criminal justice reform, it's also about Black Lives Mattering in all facets of life. It's also about the violence that happens due to poverty. It's the violence of poor housing. It's the violence of inadequate education. It is the violence of the environmental injustice that affects Harlem. And so when we say Black Lives Matter, we also need to see here and understand that that means every Black life counts. And that's what we need to be doing with the census, is making sure we are counting our Black lives. And we have seen that historically and currently our communities are undercounted, and then it leads to underrepresentation. It leads to us being under-resourced as well. It was very jarring for me to look at the sort of like zip code by zip code map, because when you look at Manhattan in general, you could see that we were like just over about 55% as of July 15th. But then when you're looking at parts of the map in parts of my district of Central Harlem, you're seeing that we're as low as 30% in some of the areas. So it's definitely a effort of love over here in the Kristin for Harlem team and in our camp, where we are going to go out. We do weekly street teams, and we are going to incorporate census outreach into that. And we're going to do a particularly big push on September 1st. And then we'll also do another big push with all the candidates on the candidates count weekend. But what we have to do is get the community to realize the connection between what we're fighting for in the streets and with our protests and Black Lives Matter and the census, because they are absolutely connected and people don't always see the connection.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And it's also very connected to voting.
Yeah.
So let's go to, are we headed to Julia? Is it Julia Foreman from Queens?
Sure, thank you so much. So most people who I talk to these days know one of the first things I ask is, have you done the census? Are you asking people about the census? Queens is, as I said before, it's the world's borough. We have immigrant communities from everywhere, from every corner of this earth. And the current administration in the White House made an effort to scare immigrant communities from responding to the census. They tried to tie this to citizenship. They tried to tie this to, who's here with a green card, who's not, and that's not a question anymore. So it's so important that, especially with them now also pushing back the deadline to September 30th, that everyone knows how important it is to get counted and what that means for our communities. For District 26 in particular in Western Queens, the population of Western Queens in 2010 is so much lower than our current population. We have had a population boom over the past decade. And with that, it brings a lot of people. I think in a lot of ways that's great, but at the same time, we're seeing a lot of families coming here, which means that we need more school seats, period. And the way to get that funding is we have to have an accurate count. We have to show who's here. And that's how we are going to be able to show that we need that money for our schools. I also know that children from age 0 to 5 are some of the lowest reported. And this is for 10 years. So all those kids are going to be in schools, and I'm so nervous that if we don't get an accurate count, the fight for more school seats is just going to be that much harder. Beyond that, our district also doesn't have a hospital, nor is it near any place for a woman to give birth. So we need this funding. We need to build extra hospitals in Queens. We need them in Western Queens. Women shouldn't have to go several districts over or across a bridge to Manhattan in order to have a baby. I haven't had one yet, but from what I understand, you kind of want to be near the place where that happens. So all these things are so tied to the census, and I just want to make sure Queens gets counted.
Thank you so much for that. And I think people do forget that the census is, not forget, people don't realize that the census is tied directly to how many children are in your community per child. So let's go to our next civic teacher that's going to talk to us a little bit about the census. And that would be Miss Althea.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Althea Stevens. I am running for City Council in the Boogie Down Bronx, District 16. And for us and the city, the census, especially to the Bronx specifically, we are number one in everything. And when I say number one in everything, we're number one in obesity. We're the poorest. My district is in the poorest congressional district. Like all of those things, everything bad. And some of that is because we are consistently undercounted, which means we do not get the funding that we need in order to get the resources and services that our community needs. So for me, I'm always talking about, I want to be number one for some good things, which is why I was so hyped when I was number two. Well, when I thought I was number two. But it was so hyped because the Bronx has this era where it's always bad things. It's always about what's going wrong in the Bronx and all these things. And, we have bad asthma, we have food deserts, we have all these things, but those things need to be connected and tied to how we are underfunded. And that is super important. And everybody who knows me knows that I'm always talking about how I'm a youth developer and how my voice is always going to be used to amplify our young people in that work. The reason our schools are failing, the reason that they are not getting the things that they need in order to stay off the streets and to not be involved in violence and all these things. And there's an uptick in all these things because there's nothing for them to do. And in order for us to get services that we need to get these kids off the street, get them employed and get services is through the census. This is an easy way for us to get money. We should not be leaving 40% of our money on the table. It's unacceptable, and we're not doing it. So for me, I'm going to be out here in these streets, me and some other elected officials, making sure that people are getting counted and understand the importance and how it's directly connected to your well-being.
Excellent. What can I ask you out there? And I want to also ask Amoy, is there hospitals in your community?
Yeah, we have a hospital in our community. We actually have a public hospital not far from our district, and I actually have one in my district, but
they're underfunded.
They're underfunded. I mean, everyone heard of Lincoln. If anyone who knows anything about Lincoln, that is not a hospital you typically want to go to. I've had people who said things like, "Oh, I'd rather take me, even if it's longer, take me to another hospital." St. Barnabas is actually in the district, but that's also another hospital that's severely underfunded.
So on Staten Island, we only have 2 hospitals, and we do not have access to a public hospital. We are the only borough that does not have access to a public hospital, which means we do not get anywhere close to our fair share in public health funding for our district. So we have 2 hospitals for over 500,000 people. One of them is in the district, and it is at something 200% capacity. It's an old and outdated hospital that needs serious upgrading. And it also needs a serious influx of public funds. Richmond University Medical Center is servicing some of the most distressed districts on the borough, and yet it barely gets any public health funds. It's unacceptable, especially since Staten Islanders pay taxes. We pay taxes just like everybody else, and we deserve our tax-paying dollars to be utilized for services just like everybody else. So going back to the census.
Wait, I gotta get
you gotta get it, Wilfredo. You wanna take it. You wanna roll. I'm on.
I know.
I got because you see how Staten Island. Staten Island already number 1.
I know. My bad. I get a little caught up.
Staten Island a little bit.
I'm trying to be a gentleman here.
I know. Go
Wilfredo, get some elbows in because come on.
Wilfredo,
yes,
talking to us from Brooklyn. I know you looked at the numbers.
Okay, all day. Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me why? What's going on? Why do you care? Why are you in this? Why are you here talking to us today?
Absolutely. Again, thank you all. It's a pleasure to be with you, each and every one of y'all. Nancy, as you mentioned when we started this conversation, Brooklyn is literally last. And it's not a position that we're comfortable with. It's not a position that we're used to. Nancy, you from Brooklyn, you know what I'm talking about. So Brooklyn always leads the way, right? Brooklyn always leads the way. And so unfortunately, the census demonstrates—
Back up, Bronx, back up, people.
Listen, the census demonstrates that in a very, very disappointing way. We are leading the way in being last. And so as everyone has mentioned, obviously there are connections to resources, to congressional representation. The COVID crisis has obviously unearthed many things that were bubbling and simmering in our communities, right? As it relates to disenfranchisement, disinvestment, zip code 11239 in our community in the 42nd district that I am running to represent, which is comprised of parts of East New York and Brownsville. Zip code 11239 literally has the highest rate of COVID deaths. We don't have a hospital in the district. We have a nearby hospital, Brookdale Hospital, that is, of course, underfunded. And so filling out the census is something that we obviously all need to be focused on, ensuring that our communities fill out, because we interact with, rather the world that we interact with is impacted by the census, right? The air that we breathe, the water that we drink, absolutely everything. And if we ain't about advocating that folks fill out the census and, you know, shouting from the rooftops and organizing and engaging our folks, then we're going to feel the brunt of not being counted. It's as if we did not exist. And trust me, we are here. We need to be counted. We exist. We matter. And the only way to prove that is by filling out the census. And so thank you all again for getting us on this to talk about the census, because we can't talk about it enough. September 30th, fill out your darn census.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Wilfredo. So I want to ask you guys about education and the fact that the city is right now is broke. There's a $9 billion deficit. And so I'm gonna throw the questions back out to you guys. And Amoy, I can start with you, or anybody can choose. Everybody can try to answer this question or not. But how would you and how do you see a low count in the census affecting education in the next 10 years? And I'd like to hear some examples of what that looks like. And we're only gonna take about a minute. Could you guys raise your hands if you wanna answer this question, actually? Althea, everyone? Okay, so that means everybody just 1 minute and really take your time. And I really want you guys to share and educate. I need you to educate the community on, if we're in a $9 billion deficit right now, what does a low count in your community mean for education?
Like I said, and I started out by saying that I'm a youth developer, and everywhere I go, I shout that from the rooftops. I work in youth development. I've been doing that for over 20 years. And for me, what I know for a fact right now in our communities, our kids are struggling. They do not have the resources. And I mean, I tell people all the time, COVID only put a spotlight on what was already going on. It did not unveil anything new. We knew that our schools were failing. We knew that these things were not working, but this is going to be even more prevalent if we are not getting counted and have the funds in order for our kids to be successful, right? I run after school programs. In a lot of communities, they don't have after school programs. They don't have facilities to have these after school programs at. This is going to be very important. We won't have places for young people to go where they will be able to have adult mentorship. I'm a person who believes it is not just education. We also need to teach our children how to then have the school lessons put into real life experiences. And a lot of that stuff takes place outside of schools. So it's not just an education. It's like, how are we going to prepare these young people to be productive citizens in society? And only way we're going to be able to do that is to get them resources for them to make those experiences that they get in school to real life. And that cannot be done if we don't have the funding or the resources for them to experience those things.
Thank you, Althea.
So the one thing that I think about first and foremost, and thank you, Althea mentioned a lot of things. One of the things that I think that a lot of people, when we're talking about education and we're talking about access, is access to internet. I work in education. I currently run programs with students online using Google Classrooms. And I can't tell you, I literally had a young woman today tell me she's having issues working on Google Classrooms because she's using a hotspot. She does not have access to internet. We live in a world sometimes that people think that everybody has access and that things are equitable and everybody has resources. But just like Althea said, this shined a light on the fact that our education system is inequitable. The system is inequitable, access is inequitable, and for education at this point in time, we have to be creative about how we are looking at education. And when we're talking about the census, the fact of the matter is, a district like mine, if only 55% of the district is completed their census, well, that's 45% of funding that we don't get. And that means that a student in a school is literally sharing resources with another student, that each student is not getting equitable access and access to resources. That means principals are dealing with overcrowding. Teachers are dealing with overcrowding in their classrooms. and going out and spending their own money to buy resources in their classrooms. That is what not completing the census means for education.
Boy.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would like to go off of that and just say that in my district of Central Harlem, 16% do not have access to internet. And especially now with the pandemic, people aren't able to access libraries and to get online. And so I think even more than there is an emphasis on making sure we have everyone be counted so that we can get people the resources of computers and internet access, particularly now. And I also, on this topic, just wanted to say that in 2010, there was an undercounting of the kids across the board. And one of the things that we really have to do is make sure everyone knows that you are supposed to count your kids, that is part of the work with the census, because there were over 10% of children under 5 years old that were not counted in 2010. And we need to rectify that right now in 2020. So I also think, I just also think we need to be aware of dollars and cents. I know that is the last thing people expect a democratic socialist to say, but the dollars and cents should actually make sense and should add up, you know? So there are ways to deal with our $9 billion deficit policy-wise, in terms of we could not spend 10 billion on new jails, and that would help with the deficit, right? But also, we could increase the funding that our communities really deserve by filling out the census.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Julia.
Yeah, to add on, you know, everyone has said a lot, so I don't want to be too repetitive, but a lot of what I have been thinking about is the fact that the census is used on very specific programs sometimes. And that also comes up a lot with special education, and those students who have, you know, IEPs that require them to have certain services or certain resources. And it's so important in a city this size to make sure that every single student has access to those resources that their IEP says that they need. You know, not every student learns the same way. And if we are relying on these low levels of funding because we're not getting the census money, because the city is giving money to, you know, the police officers and not to the teachers, there are a lot of students that we're letting slip through the cracks, and that's on us. You know, we're the adults, we are the leaders in this city, and it is on us to make sure that every student gets everything they need. I'd also like to add that census data is used for Pell Grants and other federal programs that go towards college educations. And that's not often spoken about because the census doesn't really fund the colleges, but it does fund access to university and access to colleges. And it does also provide some funding for, you know, certain community colleges and vocational training. So this goes even beyond the K through 12. This is about equity through, you know, adulthood, through further education, through higher education, all of that. So it's one of those things that we can talk about this for an hour, we could talk about this for a day, and we're not even going to touch on each and every way that the census affects our kids, affects our students, affects our adults, affects all of us. It's so widespread.
And I'll jump in and just mention that, you know, I echo what everyone has already said, but obviously something that is really personal to my husband and I is the fact that foster kids count. As foster parents, sometimes we forget or we don't think that we should be counting the kids that are in our care. My husband and I, in the midst of the pandemic, we have had our oldest for about 2 years, and we got her baby sister literally in the middle of the pandemic. Thankfully, we had not filled out the census up until that point. And so when we did actually fill out the census, not only were we able to acknowledge that we were married for the first time ever in the census. That is something that is new to the census, where you can say that you, rather the relationship that you have with this other same gendered person is marriage and not some loose relationship, right? You are affirmed 10 years ago when I did the census, I hadn't even met my husband, and now I'm able to fill out the census and acknowledge that not only are he and I married, but we have two little young girls that we're foster adopting. And one of the questions that I have heard in our community that has come up a lot is about redoing the census. And, had we filled it out when we did not have our youngest daughter, we could have still filled out the census a second time, because there are stopgap measures at the Census Bureau where they deal with duplicative census reporting. And so fill out the census, foster kids count, all kids count in the census.
Great, thank you so much. So I just want to add a couple things to your comments. One, Wilfredo, I want to say to you that this census is history making. I want to say this to everyone, actually, not just to Wilfredo, but everyone who's listening, that this census is history making, and that it is the first time same-sex couples will be counted across the country. So this will be the first time. Also, what I wanted to stop and quickly say, sorry, about education, is that I love the talking point that if your child is 10 today, you will be living with this educational budget until your child is 20. That what is happening now is going to affect you for the next 10 years. And if you thought that there was no money before, then what do you think is going to happen when we're actually doing less than what we did in 2010? And that's why it's so critical and such an emergency. So I'm going to throw out another question to you guys. I know we're kind of coming up on the time, so you guys let me know how you want to proceed. But my next question is about the census being safe. And so I just want to know, by a show of hands, who would like to talk about, is the census safe? Should we be worried about if I'm undocumented, or if I have a lot of people living in my apartment that are not supposed to be living in my apartment? Does anybody want to discuss that or talk about that?
I would say go Wilfredo, because he's been such a gentleman and he's been letting us all go first. So I think
yes, Wilfredo. I was gonna say Wilfredo goes next.
Ladies, you honor me. All of y'all just honor me, continuously honor me. But as those of us on the line know, but for the benefit of those watching, it is literally illegal for the Census Bureau to share information with any other agency, be that ICE. And obviously we all have vehement issues with the way that ICE is operating in our city, particularly in this current administration. We forget that it has been in existence for a few administrations now. It just didn't pop out of nowhere. But this current administration has really leveraged it in such a way that it is hurting our people in an unconscionable way. And so there is no sharing. There is a 73-year, if I'm not mistaken, a 73-year moratorium, so to speak, in the sharing of the information on the census. And so folks should be filling out the census without fear of any repercussions, that the information is going to be shared with absolutely any other agency that is going to jeopardize their health and well-being. And so, again, fill out, I'm gonna keep on saying this, fill out the damn census.
Thank you so much. Does anybody want to add to that? Or go ahead, Julie.
One thing that I would say, if there's anyone here who is watching and is, someone who is afraid of this, just know you are a New Yorker. If you have kids, your kids are New Yorkers, and we want to make sure that we're taking care of you, that we're taking care of them, and that you are able to access all the resources that every other New Yorker gets. This is going for your hospitals. This is going for your schools, your roads, everything that we share, you share with us. So please, if you haven't filled out the census, please do it. They have access in all sorts of languages. And there are tons of people in your community who are happy to help you if you have any questions. But as someone said at an event that Amoy arranged for us earlier this week, it's 10 questions, 10 minutes, and it lasts for 10 years. So please join us and do your census.
I just want to add too, right? I think that it's important that we highlight the fact that when we talk about the census, it's not only just about getting counted and getting money, it's also about language access and cultural access, right? let's talk about 10 years ago and how the Dominican population in Washington Heights mobilized and made sure that they were recognized on the census. So it is important. It's not just about saying like, yes, we're going to get money, but this is also a way for your cultures, your language, and things to get recognized. I know for a fact that a lot of the there's a lot of people in the African community who are doing mobilizations with them to get language access, because when they go to court or when they go to the hospital or encounter with police officers, people don't know how to translate, or they don't have translators for them. So this is important to make sure that you are being counted so that you can have language access and also cultural access, so that we know that you're here. Like everyone said, Wilfredo and Julia said, it is safe. People are not allowed to share this information. So it is important that if you have a cousin who's here or whoever's staying in your house or in your bedroom, in your apartment, that you are counting them in the census. So it is important for language and cultural access.
That's an excellent point, and one that a lot of people forget about, that does give you services for your community. So when you're counted, you get representation. And so that was my next sort of question, is sort of, how do you see the census and an undercount affecting redistricting in your community? Or how do you see even the fact, and I'm gonna make this a multiple question, that it affects New York State as a whole, and in terms of our representation in Congress. So I'm gonna sort of mix that in there, and does everybody want to answer that question?
Well, Fredo can go first again, because he did raise his hand first.
And does everybody else want to answer? Okay.
Yeah, so as has been said before, congressional representation is at risk. We are literally at risk we were at risk of losing 1, now we're at risk of losing 2. Who knows how many congressional seats will be at risk before the year is through. And that should be concerning to everyone. It shouldn't just be concerning to the districts that are going to lose that representation, but as a city, we should be concerned about losing at least two members of our congressional delegation. That is obviously going to impact the resources that we get, the voices that are clamoring for resources on the congressional level, obviously because of what has just occurred with COVID and the resource deficiency that we have as a city, and how it is that we obviously are going to need more funding. We need more funding, and unless we have the proper representation, the adequate representation, the full representation of the congressional body, we're all going to suffer. Every district, every borough is going to suffer, and it's something that we cannot stand for.
To jump in, who wants to answer?
I just want to jump in terms of redistricting, because we have already seen the ways in which Harlem has been carved up, and what it does is it disempowers and disenfranchises our community in some really big ways, So my District 9 area of Central Harlem is actually one of the few left that really makes sense, right? But when you go over to District 7, you're actually having a long sliver of the island of Manhattan. You're not really getting that West Harlem representation, because they're lumped in with other parts of the borough, right? So that neighborhood, which is characteristically, culturally, economically very different, has now been lumped in because of the way the districting works, which is directly related to the census. It's even worse over in East Harlem, because you have the district drawn in a way that East Harlem gets totally overshadowed by the Upper East Side. And so those districts—
East Harlem comes into the Bronx.
And it's just, so what I'd say is that you wind up like this sliver, like, so District 5, right? I think you might be talking about District 10, where it's like that district goes up.
District 8.
But I
was saying it's District 8 that I'm talking about, how it makes no sense. It's East Harlem and it goes all the way up to High Bridge in the Bronx.
Yeah, it does. You're right. It doesn't make sense. District doesn't make sense. And District 5 also doesn't make sense because you wind up with this sliver of East Harlem that is just totally disempowered because they're overruled completely by the Upper East Side. And those areas are so drastically different. So we could go on all day about the districting, but the point is that when, as was said in the video, when they draw the lines and they draw the maps, if there's an opportunity for Black and Brown folks to lose out, that's where we wind up losing out in our representation and our advocacy. And that's directly connected to the census.
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly and just reiterate that as it relates to congressional seats, it's not a borough by borough thing, right? We'll be losing as a city, as an entire city. There's so many districts, congressional districts that, you know, share Queens and Brooklyn and Manhattan and the Bronx, right? So we're all sharing congressional seats. And if we as a city lose 2 congressional seats, it is going to be transformative and not in the way that any of us are going to like. And so it would behoove us as a people, as a community, as a city to go ahead and fill out the census. And the congressional tracts are not looking very good. Obviously, we can all check out my2020census.gov and see how the census tracts are looking per congressional district. And in New York City, they do not look particularly good.
Thank you so much, Wilfredo. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to say that if you want to complete your census now, you could go to my2020census.gov. So that's my2020census.gov. You can also call. A lot of people forget that there's a phone number, 844-330-2020. That's 844-330-2020. And it's in over 38 languages. I think you can get your census done. You also should keep in mind that the phone number may have you wait a little bit because of COVID. The phone lines are kind of delayed, but if you're home, and as long as you just make that call, you're also not going to have somebody knocking on your door. So the enumerators have just started coming out. People will be knocking on your door. They're not there to tell on you. They are there to get these numbers that we need. This is federal funding that goes to NYCHA housing. People forget about that. We've been talking about NYCHA for the past 10 years. And so NYCHA, it's time to stand up. We got to support each other because there are people in fear. And that's why this group came together today to show you as part of the community, not only do they care, but they understand and that they're willing to share. So when I talk about a radical form of a new form of communication, that is where people who want to represent you should be able to speak to you, should be able to talk to you, and should be able to share their concerns, their wants, and their needs for your community in terms of what they're seeing. So it's 9 o'clock. I'm gonna ask for some guidance in terms of, should we keep going? I can go on and on with the questions. And I can do one more. And is there any questions from the chat? Actually, yeah, that would be great.
One of the things that I do want to mention, Nancy, is that as city council candidates, candidates from all across the city are doing great work around the census. And so I want to give kudos and props to the amazing candidates all across the city who have come together under the hashtag Candidates for the Count to actually use their platform to amplify the voices of their community and make sure that their community is counted. When I reached out to candidates, every single person I spoke to understood the reality that no matter what happens, if we don't get our communities counted, everybody loses. We all lose. And we all start doing the budget dance, which is what city council members do. city council members, one of their main roles is budgeting and allocation of resources. And what would happen with the next city council members is we'd be allocating less resources than we have now. And the fact is that we all know that the resources that are being allocated right now is not enough. So I want to give a lot of kudos and props to all the candidates across the city. All of them are coming together. We're going to do a Census Day of Action the weekend of September 12th. We want to reach out to everyone and say, please sign up and contact your local candidates. I think
actually, if you received an email for this event, you will receive an email response as to any per borough what events you want to, if you want to connect to any of these guys here and you have an idea for an event in your community, we want you to reach back out to through email through this event and be able to sort of join in with the candidates up here in doing something in your community.
Yes, I think a lot of candidates here, and if everybody wants to go around and talk about the work that they have upcoming.
Yeah, I would be happy. I did mention earlier the street teams. So the Kristin for Harlem team, we go out every Tuesday. And so you are more than welcome and invited to join us. We do different parts of the district, and we are incorporating knowledge about the census into some of our outreach efforts. And we are also doing a huge outreach on census on September 1st, which is one of those Tuesdays. And then for those who are internet savvy and or sort of creative folks, we are looking on doing a swipe through campaign, which will be a series of Insta posts in order to promote the census and also to demystify some of these things like the risk and the fear that people have about filling it out and the need to count kids and things like that. So feel free to plug into that. It's all at kristinforharlem.com. Yeah, as soon as you sign up, we'll follow up with you and you can just say, I want to be on the census team.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Julia.
I just very quickly, yes, I'm going to be taking part in the September 12th big thing that we're all going to do together, but every Friday, and not necessarily as part of my campaign, but I am at a event that we have at Queensbridge houses, Community Building Fridays, and there are members of the census team there. Anyone who wants to come and hop in and volunteer and talk to neighbors, we are there every single Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Organizations from across the area get together. We have lunch. There's information about local advocacy groups, mutual aid efforts, and it's just a great way to get to know people in the neighborhood. We also are now planning a event the weekend of the 29th to coincide with the 1 month before the census is due, where we're going to be hitting some of the lower counted areas of Long Island City and making sure that everyone knows we need you to fill out the census. We all need to be counted.
So right now it's so interesting. I was talking to the new elected Democratic nominee, Chantel Jackson. We're actually going to be going to some of our local laundromats and paying for people's loads of laundry if and when they fill out their census. So we're going to be doing that this weekend. We're also going to be at a couple events in our community. I'm having a double dutch, a jump for unity and peace. We'll also be having a census table and making sure people are filling out their census. And so we are all over this in the Bronx. And like I said, we coming for Staten Island. We coming for the whole country because we want to be #1 for something positive this go around. And so we're going to work.
All right. I love those ideas. Anyone else?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have also been organizing around the census. We are having Census Days of Action all across the district. We have an upcoming Census Day of Action on Saturday. We have an event tomorrow, a community workout where we are going to be doing census work as well. And so incorporating it into literally everything that we're doing for the next a little less than 50 days is something that we are committed to doing. And we ask folks to come on board and to join us to make sure that we're counted.
So in Staten Island, I just always want to highlight the amazing work that community-based organizations have been doing, and also the census workers. The census workers across the city truly have been pushing away at this for months. And everything that we try to do is trying to piggyback and support the work that they're doing. In my district, it pretty much supports a majority of the NYCHA housing that's on Staten Island. And these are tend to be typically low count areas. And so once again, going back to that discussion around housing and how the funding for housing and how pretty much the federal government has de-invested in housing. And we as local city municipalities have had to pretty much flip the bill to make sure and sustain housing and public housing for our communities, and to keep them public and prevent them from privatization. We want to make sure that our NYCHA residents, our community members, that they're counted and that we keep the affordable housing in our community. So my campaign and volunteers are going to go to every single do weekends of action at every single NYCHA building in our district to make sure that our NYCHA residents are counting and make sure that public housing remains public.
Fantastic. So I think we may want to wrap this up. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel?
Were there some questions in the chat?
I'm not sure. I think there.
I'm not sure if there's questions in the chat, but I did want to just make a statement really quickly that one of the things I think that no one really ever really talks about is that the census isn't really taught to anyone. This is not part of the school curriculum. This is not part of anything someone would know. So it is important that if people have questions, these are the forms, and this is why we're doing this, because it's important that we're educating everyone about the census and they're understanding what's going on with the census. I think that's Chantel who just actually jumped into the chat.
Chantel, what up? How you doing?
Hi. Hello.
We can't see you.
Give me a second. I'm getting it together.
So
I was
Friends
watching
and Family
Hamilton.
Outreach. What is, so folks said Friends and Family Outreach, what is this? And my friends as we make sure.
I put that
so one of the things that
I put that in there.
Oh, okay.
That is something that you could do for the city if you want.
Oh, so I just wanted us to welcome the new elected Chantel Jackson, who's the new Democratic nominee for the 79th district in the Assembly. So let's clap it up for us. Thank you for jumping in on the call with us and finding time just to jump in and say hello. And she has been working hard on the census, and every conversation she has, she's always talking about the census. So I guess let's give her a couple of minutes to just kind of talk about that work and why it's so important.
Hi, guys. What up, squad?
What up?
Hello, hello.
So yeah, we all know how important it is to be counted, and Althea knows at a drop of a dime, I'm like, oh, let's try this. I am always.
I just told them about our laundromat thing.
Oh, great. So I don't have to say that. Great. Yeah. I'm always looking for new ways to get my people counted. And so whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it, whatever it takes. And so I don't need to say, again, why we need to be counted. And I just want us to create new ways to make sure that we can get as many of our people counted as possible. And I'm all about incentives. I will incentivize almost anything. Can
I jump in and interrupt you? So I noticed that you are a social worker.
I am.
Okay. And so we talked a lot about education. We talked a lot about, is it safe? We talked about why it's so important. Could you say why the census is so important for mental health?
Yeah.
So those resources. Could you speak to that a bit?
Sure. So let me just finish my thought before I forget it, because I do this often. So what I want to do in my neighborhood is make sure that our businesses are connected to this process as well. And so I want to make requests from our local businesses to offer some kind of discounted price that I can give to people once they complete their census with me. And so I'm looking at, right here we have a Starbucks, we have Food Bazaar, we have all of these businesses that made money hand over fist, during COVID, even though some of the other businesses did not. And so I'm going to be relying on them to give some kind of discounted prices to my neighbors to make sure that they are incentivized to complete their census. So I will have a table set up, and we're going to ask these businesses to honor some kind of price adjustment for them, and we're going to get that done. But as far as mental health is concerned,
that is amazing.
Nancy, you're muted.
Oh no, I think
I just want to stop for a second because I threw her off a little bit by asking her about mental health, because she said something very important. So you're basically working alongside small businesses, and I missed how you're connecting that with the census. So if you do the census, you're able to get a discounted.
Yes, you should be able to get some kind of a discount at different stores. And so what I want to do tomorrow is spend some time walking through my neighborhood and asking them, like, what can you offer? What kind of adjusted prices can you offer for maybe a meal or a service, whatever the case may be, if someone completes their census. And it's extremely important that we just be as creative as possible so that in the long run, we will all see the benefits to the money and the funds coming into our neighborhoods. And when it comes to mental health, we're talking about our hospitals, right? Like how many hospitals we are going to have, how many beds we are allowed to have in these hospitals, just the services in general. If we don't show that there's a need in a population that's deserving of it, then it won't happen. It's hard to ask for money and say, like, we're going to serve 3 million people, and then you can't show that 3 million people are needy of the service, right? And so that's why it's extremely important for us to be counted, and be counted, and knowing, our demographics is important, because there's going to be services that are different for Black women. The service is going to be very different for Black women than it is for maybe an Asian man, right? And so all of these things are factors. Excellent. But thank you for this important conversation.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the work that you're doing and all of you are doing. I wanted to add to a good idea. Someone got a little mini grant, like really small, and they are giving, $110 gift cards out, right?
Yes.
Get people counted. So thank you for adding that it takes our creativity and you as a validator to get out there on the ground. It's so important. It's, I work for the New York City Census. I'm not the validator in your community. You're the validator. And so that was really important to add to the conversation. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for your work. And now I'm going back to mute.
So there were 2 questions. One of them was why isn't the census done more often? And so I just wanted to sort of answer that question if nobody minds, and feel free to jump in. So the census was chosen, we're not the only ones who have it, it's called a decennial census. In Amsterdam, they don't have a decennial census. They don't do it every 10 years. In Amsterdam, you actually register with the government. So the government knows where everyone lives. So if someone actually moves in with you, the government has to know that person lives with you. And every time you move, you need to alert the government of where you move to. Now, I love Amsterdam, and but that sounded a little weird to me. But that's how they keep track of their infrastructure and how they plan ahead for families and growth, or even for their seniors, right? So in the United States, we do it every 10 years because they're looking for the longevity of growth. They're taking the history of what happened 10 years ago, and adding it to what's going to happen in the future. The government doesn't care where you live. You can move anywhere you want in the United States. The government does not want to know or care where you are. But just every 10 years, it's a snapshot of where everybody is at that moment, which is supposed to give the true picture of what the city now looks like, right? Or what the needs are. So I wanted to share that. I'm sorry, someone else can add to that if they like. But the second question was, how can you see the census? So one of the things we didn't discuss is that the census also keeps the history of your dynasty, right? So when we get the next James Baldwin, if his family completed the census, we could save his house. That house now becomes sacred. Or we know that now this community has grown into this. So every 72 years, that information is released, right? So when you look at ancestry.com, and you look at, but you can actually find out this by just going on the census.gov and searching. You can find historical data back to the Civil War. So I love a quick story of Brian Gumbel, who was doing his ancestry, and they told him that his great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was in the Civil War, but he fought in the Confederate Army. And Brian Gumbel was like, what? No. And then he showed him, well, you see in the history books, you know, there was a battle and those Confederate soldiers flipped over to the other side, to the Union. But then we lost track of your grandfather, and we find him 10 years later in the census. And this is who your family is and who they were and where they lived and where they were located. So we should also not allow people to steal our dynasty. It's important to know that a Caribbean community was living in this area for this amount of time and built these businesses. So I just wanted to add that to the story. Did someone else come on?
No, I think we're wrapping up.
We're wrapping up. All right, guys. I want to say to you, thank you on behalf of the community for being brave, for coming out, for trying, for working, and sharing. And I think that you guys should do it again. I think you guys have a lot to offer, even if you do it on your own platform. Don't forget to educate. So before you can represent, you need to educate. So I thank you for doing your part. And I thank you so much for helping us rebound and rebuild. You're doing your part in helping us rebound and rebuild from this pandemic. And everybody out there, if you want New York City to rebound and to rebuild, and you want our communities to be able to get better faster, then we need to do the census. So thank you, everybody.
So everybody can do, does anybody want to say like a 1-minute closeout? You're on mute.
I answered for everybody. I was like, no, I think everybody.
No, I was going to say, I'm Althea Stevens, running for City Council District 16. Make sure you wash your hands, wear a mask, and fill out your census.
Amoy Barnes, District 49, Staten Island. Sign up to join #Team Amoy at amoybarnes.com and join me in getting into some good trouble and making sure our community is represented and get its resources.
I'm Julia. Oh, go for it, Kristin.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Kristin Richardson Jordan. I sometimes go by Kristin for Harlem or KRJ. I'm on a mission to disrupt District 9 with radical love, and fill out your census, because we need to disrupt the master's tools, and this is one of them. And part of the community love is going to be giving back and getting resources for our neighborhood.
I'm Julia Foreman, District 26. As some others have said, make sure, wash your hands, wear a mask, fill out your census. I love that, Alfie. I'm totally going to steal it. If you want to follow me, votejulia.com, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, and I'll be posting about all the events that we're doing. Or as I said, you can always find me Friday afternoon from the Jacob Reese neighborhood settlement in Queensbridge houses. And this is just one of those things that adds on to everything that I'm speaking about on my platform. Where I'm talking about improving our transportation, getting us more deeply, actually affordable housing, fixing NYCHA, making better schools. All of this starts with everyone filling out their census. So please, 10 minutes, you got this. All online, very easy.
And lastly, I am Wilfredo Florentino, running for the 42nd district, which includes portions of East New York and Brownsville. Please join us, join our Unbossed campaign that is fighting for equity and justice, not just in our district, but all throughout our city, at wilfredoflorentino.com. Again, wash your hands. 10 questions, 10 minutes are going to impact us for the next 10 years. You got this. Let's do this together.
All right. Sammy says goodbye as well.